Hello everybody. Today I'm here with a look back at all of the hero concepts that I've done so far. I've created 10 and I just kind of want to look at the progress I've made. Each of these have only gotten like a spotlight for a few minutes in each of their videos, and I put a lot of work into them, so I feel like I deserve a second look at all of them and just going over my thoughts on each of the characters and everything. None of them have yet been like added to the game. I'd love someday to be able to compare one of my creations to what they actually look like in game. But I'm pretty excited just to look at all of them again and tell you my thoughts about them. And as you kind of see in the thumbnail, it says Season 1. I will kind of address that at the end of the video. Let's just start going through each of them. So first up, we have Yokai from Big Hero 6. This one I created in a singular day, which he's definitely like the most simplest in terms of like just pose, I guess. It's just his upper shoulders and his head. But this was also the first one I'd created, so it was kind of a different process. And honestly, I think it's one of the best ones that I've made, which is kind of sad in a way, but it's also just super simple. And like the mask turned out really great. I even did like more shading on this one than I do in any of the other ones, just because it's a lot of work. And for this one, since it was my first one, I felt like it was necessary. And I think it worked pretty successfully, but in the future I toned it down a lot more, just because that's a lot of work to be putting into these. But it turned out really great, and I would love for Yokai to someday get added. We have a lot of Big Hero 6 characters already though, so maybe it's possibly just unlikely because of that. But if we were to get one more, I bet it would be Yokai. Alright, so let's move on to the next one, which was Phineas and Ferb, the only duo that I've done so far. I would like to do a duo again at some point, but I think I just need to be careful about who I do. And I think Phineas and Ferb was the perfect way to start with that, because they are both fairly simple. They each took about the same time as one of like the more detailed characters would have taken, so it was pretty perfect. And it has to do with like the fact that they are a TV character, so it's a little simpler in design, obviously, because they need to draw them a lot more. And the shading I went fairly simple on, and it was kind of just a good introduction to TV show characters too, because I've done a few of them now, and they've all kind of had a similar theme that I've tried to create. And also I did a lot more variation with their hair. To be fair, I haven't done many characters that have an emphasis on the hair, but like I'm realizing now I should have done a lot more with like Star Butterfly's hair, which I didn't think about at the time, but when I was doing Phineas and Ferb, I was still very much so looking at what the characters in the game look like and how I should be recreating them. And I've kind of lost that, I guess, in a way. So I think when I come back to these, I should try to pay more attention to that again, because I think the hair designs kind of make it feel more like it's in-game rather than just a picture of the characters. Alright, so let's move on to Ka, who is probably not a character I would have normally even thought of creating, but it was suggested to me. And I really liked the idea, and I liked the idea of having him like be off screen, which ultimately meant that I had to do a lot more work creating the backside of his body, I guess. And this one took a very long time, which I wasn't expecting either. But I also have fond memories of creating this one too. I don't really have memories of creating most of them, but for some reason, it really sticks in my head what I was doing at the time, because I was listening to stuff in the background, and I had a really good time creating Ka. And now looking at it, you can obviously see some weird inconsistencies with the shading and the lighting and everything. But for one of my earlier ones, I think it was a really cool idea, and people seem to like it too, which made me happy. The maybe hypnotism eyes I could have done better on, but overall, I like how that one turned out too. We move on to the mayor, which was an interesting one since I was basing it off of a model of a 3D animated character, or an actual claymation model. And the kind of line quality and feeling of the Nightmare Before Christmas characters is vastly different compared to everybody else. So I was trying to recreate that as well. And this one took a very long time, I know that. And I made it way in advance for Halloween, which was a fun idea too, to have like a Halloween special. I don't think I've ever done that. But it was really fun, like making the lines for him. I didn't have as much fun coloring him, I would say, because that just took a very long time. And I even was so ambitious that I was planning on creating his other face, the other side of his face. But after the amount of time it took to actually create him, I decided that was way too much effort to put into something that I would hardly even show. And I remember I was making his suit like brown, and then as I kept looking at references, I realized his suit was definitely not brown, it's more of a gray. Like I was looking at merchandise specifically, I was just like, it's clearly gray, but in the picture I had, he was brown. So I remember some stuff like that, just fixing some colors, which just took even more time than I had already spent. But I really like the way that he turned out. I think he's fairly unlikely, I guess. Same with Ka, I guess I should say. But this would be really cool to get him, because I think he has a viable moveset still. Alright, let's move on to Sprig Plantar. And I would still really love to create Anne. And if people hadn't suggested me to do Sprig specifically, I probably would have done Anne. But Sprig was probably a lot easier and much more like visually appealing because of his pink color, I think. And I created this on like a camping trip because I brought my laptop with, there was no Wi-Fi, so I just ended up creating this when I had some free time, and I have fond memories of that too. I guess I was saying with Ka, I only had memories of that one, but I also have some very distinct memories of creating Sprig, which was really nice. It's just kind of a relaxing experience. And this is one of the more dynamic ones I've done since he actually is in an action. I guess the Horn King as well is maybe one that's a bit more ambitious compared to some of the other ones like Star Butterfly and Phineas and Ferb, where they're kind of just standing there. But I also just took this from a PNG from the show, so I can't really take too much credit for that. But the lighting on this one I think turned out really great. And then I was pretty, I didn't do too much with the shading because he is a TV show character as well, so I try to keep that in mind too. But it looks really cool, and people seem to be happy with it, so I'm glad with that one too. Moving on to Daisy Duck, which I think is the most deserved out of any of them to actually end up in the game, out of the ones that I've made so far, and probably the most likely, I would say. It's kind of weird that we don't have Daisy Duck, honestly. But it was fun creating her too. It was kind of a decision between her and Pete, and it just came down to, I really think that she deserves the spot more than Pete, even though I think Pete also deserves the spot and would be really cool to see. But I kind of had to choose between, she has a lot of different outfits over the years as well, so I had to choose the purple outfit specifically. I thought it was the most classic, and then kind of a pose that fits her, I think, where she's got the hands on her hips, she's looking slyly to the left. I think that's exactly how she would look in game, honestly. I think that's perfect. So I'm really happy with the final result of that one, even if it's not how it would look in game. To me, that's what it feels like it should look like. Anyways, the next one I made was Elizabeth Swann, which is arguably the worst one I've done so far. Live action characters are just so hard, which she's the only one that I've done, and I've realized that now. I think a character with a more distinguishable face, if that makes sense, like a face that you'd instantly recognize, because it was kind of hard making Elizabeth Swann look like how she does in the movie. She has these very distinct cheekbones, which I was trying to recreate, but I think the way that I did it was not the best. But that was like how I was envisioning it in my head, so I thought it would work out, and then it didn't, and then I just stuck with it anyways, but I don't think I should have. And like the pose that she's in is kind of awkward. It doesn't really look like it would be in the game either. Maybe if you looked like at the very bottom of like the outfit and like the arms, I think that's fairly well done. But like the head and the hair, I don't think fit the style of the game, unfortunately. And the hat just kind of ended up looking weird, although I think it's a good look for her to have that hat. The way that I made it just ended up not looking the way I was wanting. It really doesn't even look like the hat that she has in the movie, the way that I rendered it, but Overall, just a very iffy concept that I'm not too happy with, and that didn't get as many views as the other ones, which is completely understandable. That kind of makes me wary of doing another live action character, and to be honest, I don't even know what other live action characters I would do. But if there's ever an opportunity to do another one, and I'm confident enough to do it, maybe I'll do it. But it definitely brought down my confidence a bit. So kind of a a bad one to touch on, but we got to look at our mistakes so we can move on and learn from them as well. So let's move on to Tamatoa, who was fun creating the treasure on this back, particularly, because it was kind of a different thing from anything that I've done, but I think it turned out pretty cool. And I also made like a gradient for the claw, which was something else that I hadn't done in any of the other ones. I'm still a bit iffy on it, but like I tried creating it a few different ways and it just didn't look right. But yeah, I made his whole entire other claw, which is just completely off screen, just so I could duplicate it and put it on the other hand. So those are the exact same model, but you can't tell because the one is just off the screen. So I put a lot of work into something that never even showed up. Like I even made, I made the entire claw basically, and you don't see it on either side, which is just kind of sad. But Tamatoa is a huge character, so that's just kind of how it ended up working out. And it didn't, I was hoping the video would like get a lot of views since Tamatoa seems to do that, but so far it hasn't. And it's just gotten like the normal amount of views, which I guess I can't complain. At least people were still regularly happy with it. But I like how this one turned out too, and this was kind of the one that really wore me out, I would say. It took a very long time and there's a lot of work involved, and this one was like the longest span of time in between them, especially after I just created Elizabeth Swann, which I did create fairly quickly, but then it really kind of burned me out, and then as I was working on Tamatoa right after that, I was like, okay, I'm just getting burnt out. So I ended up focusing on a lot of other side projects, including like schoolwork and just other hobbies, until I finally got around to coming back to it. I was like, okay, I'm going to get this done. And then I did it. So I'm happy that I just got it done, I guess. Let's move on to Star Butterfly, who I spent a long time like procrastinating too. But when I got around to her, I drew her completely. Then the next time I colored her in completely, and then the next time I added her shading and her lighting completely. But there were like long spans in between each of those times. So it was a bit of different creation. I hope it still kind of feels uniform, even though it wasn't created as such. I think she looks really accurate to how she looks in the show, but compared to how characters look in the game, I don't think it did that great. Like I was saying before with Phineas and Ferb, I made some effects in their hair, which are similar to how a lot of the characters in the game look, and I just made no effort to make her hair look any different, which I don't think is accurate to how the game would have done it. So a little, like I'm a little disappointed in myself now just realizing that, but I still like how she looks, and I hope you guys do too. Alright, and moving on to the final one, the Horned King. At the time of me recording this, I haven't even uploaded that video yet, so I don't even know people's reactions to it. And it's the most recent one that I've done. I haven't worked on any since, but I really like how the hands turned out specifically, and I think the pose is really cool. And I think it's pretty close to a pose they would choose for a picture of him. I think having his hands up in the air is a pretty interesting way to show him, like just in the menus and stuff. Because otherwise he's just going to be like standing still, which is pretty boring. And it's maybe a little off model to what he would end up looking like. As I mentioned in the video, he does have pupils. Maybe the skull that I created is a little rounded in some aspects, as well as like the horns in the top. Sometimes they look angular and sometimes they look round. So, and the one that I did a pretty round, which ends up looking pretty nice. But they also kind of look more like antlers sometimes. So, yeah, I don't know, but I think it ended up looking really cool, and it's one of the more like visually interesting ones that I've done. So I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. So those are the 10 Disney heroes hero concepts that I've done. And I'm calling this kind of season 1, quote unquote, because I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break from making them, either just so that I can make some, get them ready to upload, and then schedule them out, or just, you know, give myself a personal break from creating a bunch of these. But in no way do I want to quit making them as a thing. I'm still fairly motivated to continue doing so, and I have no plans to quit at the moment. So keep suggesting characters that you'd like to see, because I still need some great ideas to create characters. And as we can continue to get more characters in the game, I hope someday I can compare mine to some of the ones we actually got officially, so that we can see how my work compares to an official render in the game, because that's kind of the whole point. But I've had a lot of fun so far, and I hope you guys appreciate the work I put into these, and I hope you appreciate or are okay with me just taking these 10 characters and looking at them again, just because I put so much work into them. So yeah, be ready to just not see any hero concepts for a little bit, but I plan to come back. So oh, also I want to say it is also very likely that I may end daily uploads sometime soon, and I'll probably get back into it at some point, but the games that I've been playing just have not been giving me any content to create. I don't just want to do a Disney Heroes team showcase every single day, so if the games don't start getting updates or anything, I'm not going to have videos to create, and therefore I'm going to run out of things to do for daily uploads. So if you notice that, that's just what's going to happen. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. I will see you soon. Goodbye.